I'm Ellie Thompson, 32, and a single-voice memo shattered my entire world last Tuesday. My sister Rachel, always the perfect daughter, accidentally sent me a recording meant for our mother. Mom, I've taken care of everything like we planned. Ellie still has no idea what we did to her husband. My hands trembled as her words echoed in my empty kitchen. The sister I'd trusted my whole life had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even comprehend. Before I dive deeper into how my sister's betrayal turned my life upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy family drama stories with unexpected twists. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this all unfolds and the sweet justice that follows. Growing up in suburban Boston, the Thompson family appeared picture-perfect from the outside. My parents, Richard and Diana, both successful attorneys, raised Rachel and me in a sprawling colonial home with all the privileges money could buy. Rachel, 2 years older, was the golden child, valedictorian, homecoming queen, and eventually following our parents' footsteps into law. Meanwhile, I carved my own path as a wedding photographer, much to my mother's perpetual disappointment. Photography is a hobby, not a career, she'd say during our Sunday dinners, while my father nodded in agreement. Only Rachel would occasionally defend me, which made me cling to our sisterly bond even more desperately. When I met Jason at a friend's wedding I was photographing, our connection was immediate. He was charming, ambitious, and worked in finance. Finally, someone my family might approve of. On our third date, he confessed something that touched me deeply. I love how passionate you are about your work. You see beauty where others don't. After years of feeling inadequate, his words were like oxygen. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 8 months, Jason proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. I was ecstatic, especially when Rachel seemed genuinely happy for me. You deserve someone who appreciates you, Ellie, she said, hugging me tightly at our engagement dinner. The wedding planning brought my mother and me closer than we'd ever been. Diana Thompson, usually critical and distant, suddenly wanted to be involved in every decision. I want this to be perfect for you, she insisted, taking over the venue selection and guest list. At the time, I interpreted her involvement as love. How naive I was. Jason was welcomed into the family with unusual enthusiasm. My father invited him to golf outings, and my mother arranged dinners with her colleagues' sons who worked in similar fields. Rachel even helped Jason find a better position at her law firm's partner bank. Family helps family, she'd say with that perfect smile. Our wedding day was everything I'd dreamed of, a summer ceremony overlooking the ocean, followed by a reception at my parents' country club. Rachel, as my maid of honor, gave a tearful speech about sisterhood and finding true love. Jason is the brother I never had, she declared, raising her champagne. I'll always be here for both of you. The crowd awed, and I cried happy tears, feeling truly blessed. The first year of marriage was blissful. Jason and I bought a charming townhouse not far from my parents. We spent weekends renovating, dreaming of the family we would raise there. Rachel visited often, bringing housewarming gifts and offering decorating advice. Sometimes she'd bring files for Jason to review, just getting his expert opinion. She'd explain when I questioned the frequency of these work discussions. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. The hushed phone conversations Jason would have late at night. The way my mother would change the subject whenever I talked about having children. Rachel's increased interest in our finances, disguised as sisterly concern. I just want to make sure he's taking good care of you, she'd say, asking pointed questions about our investments. 2 years into our marriage, Jason began working later hours. When I expressed concern, Rachel was surprisingly dismissive. All men in finance work crazy hours, Ellie. Don't be that wife. My mother echoed the same sentiment. Diana, women who cling too tightly lose their husbands. I listened to them because I trusted them. Because they were family. When Jason started traveling frequently for work, Rachel suggested we have regular sisters' nights. You need distractions, she insisted, planning our evenings with meticulous care. We'd drink wine while she'd subtly probe about my marriage. Had Jason mentioned any big career moves? Was he stressed about work? Had he updated his will since getting married? The question seemed odd, but Rachel had always been practical to a fault. When I shared my concerns that Jason seemed increasingly distant, she was quick with reassurance. He's building a future for you both. Men need space to do that. My mother reinforced this during our family brunches, adding, the Thompson women are strong and independent. We don't smother our men. So I gave him space, trusting my family's advice. I focused on growing my photography business, even taking assignments that required me to travel. Rachel helped manage my schedule, often suggesting I take jobs that coincided with Jason's time at home. To give him breathing room, she explained. The distance between us grew, and I couldn't understand why. Jason, once open and affectionate, became guarded. When I finally confronted him 6 months ago, his response chilled me. I sometimes feel like I married your entire family, not just you. Before I could process what he meant, he left for another business trip. It would be his last. The police officers arrived at my door on a rainy Thursday evening. Their expression somber, they informed me that Jason had been found dead in his hotel room, an apparent heart attack. At 34, my husband was gone. The shock was paralyzing. I called Rachel first, not my parents. She arrived within minutes, taking control with terrifying efficiency. I'll handle everything, she promised, holding me as I sobbed uncontrollably. And she did, the funeral arrangements, notifying friends and colleagues, even sorting through Jason's personal effects. My mother moved into our guest room to help, though her help mainly consisted of fielding calls and keeping visitors to a minimum. Grief is private, Diana insisted, turning away Jason's college friends when they came to offer condolences. Ellie isn't up for visitors. But I hadn't said that. In fact, I desperately wanted to connect with people who had known and loved Jason outside our family bubble. The funeral was elegant and restrained, exactly what Jason would have wanted, according to my mother, though I couldn't remember Jason ever expressing funeral preferences. Rachel gave another perfect speech about loss and legacy. My father handled the financial matters with Jason's bank. Everyone had a role except me. I was merely expected to look appropriately devastated but not cause a scene. 2 weeks after the funeral, Rachel and my mother accompanied me to a meeting with Jason's attorney. I was surprised to learn that Jason had updated his will just months before his death. Even more surprising was the contents, the bulk of his substantial assets, including a life insurance policy I knew nothing about, was placed in a trust managed by my father's firm, with me as beneficiary, but with significant restrictions on how and when I could access the funds. It's to protect you, Rachel explained later, her tone suggesting I should be grateful. Jason knew you aren't good with money. But that wasn't true. I had successfully run my own business for years. Jason had always respected my financial independence. The attorney, an old family friend of my parents, seemed uncomfortable throughout the meeting but deferred to my father repeatedly. When I asked for copies of all documents, Rachel quickly interjected, "We'll handle that, Ellie. You focus on healing." Something felt wrong, but grief clouded my judgment. I retreated into myself, putting my business on hold and rarely leaving the house. Rachel checked in daily, bringing meals and managing my affairs. My mother supervised my grieving process with clinical detachment, discouraging therapy. Thompson women don't air private matters to strangers, and suggesting instead that I focus on practical matters. 3 months after Jason's death, I discovered his personal laptop hidden in our storage room. Rachel had told me she'd returned all his belongings from his office, but I hadn't seen this computer before. The password protection defeated me for days until I tried our wedding anniversary backward, a combination we'd used for years as an inside joke. The files I found were confusing at first: emails between Jason and a private investigator, financial records showing large transfers to offshore accounts, and a folder labeled simply Thompson. Inside were surveillance photos of my family, my parents entering buildings I didn't recognize, Rachel meeting with men in expensive suits, and most disturbing, screenshots of encrypted messages discussing the plan and contingencies if he becomes suspicious. I was still trying to make sense of it all when Rachel called, her voice unusually tense. "Ellie, have you been going through Jason's things?" "Mom is concerned." I lied for the first time to my sister, claiming I was simply organizing his clothes for donation. Her relief was palpable. That's good. It's time to move forward. I'm coming over tomorrow to help. That night, I copied everything from Jason's laptop onto a secure drive and then restored the computer to its hiding place. My husband had been investigating my family, but why? What had he discovered that warranted such secrecy? And most importantly, what did it have to do with his sudden death? I began my own investigation, carefully and quietly. I created a new email account and contacted the private investigator Jason had hired, claiming to be following up on my husband's behalf. The PI was initially reluctant, but agreed to meet after I sent him a photo of Jason and me with a coded message Jason had apparently established as verification. We met in a coffee shop 2 towns over. Martin Reynolds was a retired detective with skeptical eyes and a direct manner. "I was sorry to hear about your husband," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. He was onto something big. Something dangerous. The envelope contained what Jason hadn't stored on his laptop, detailed reports on my family's activities over the past decade. The picture they painted was devastating. My perfect, successful family was involved in sophisticated financial fraud schemes, using their positions and connections to embezzle funds from clients and manipulate investments. Jason had discovered this while working with my father on what he thought was a legitimate business venture. "Your husband was gathering evidence to report them to the SEC," Martin explained. "But he was worried about you, about what would happen to you when it all came out. He wanted ironclad proof that you weren't involved before he moved forward." I felt sick. Did they know? That Jason was investigating them. Martin's expression confirmed my worst fears. In my professional opinion, yes. About 2 months before he died, their behavior changed. They started counter-surveillance. "Your sister hired someone to track Jason's movements." My sister. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. "She's the most active player in all this," Martin said, showing me photos of Rachel meeting with known fixers and financial criminals. "Your husband believed she was the mastermind, with your parents providing the legal protection and connections." I left that meeting with my world completely shattered. The family I'd loved and trusted my entire life was not only criminal, but potentially responsible for Jason's death. The heart attack that took my 34-year-old, health-conscious husband suddenly seemed highly suspicious. Back home, I obsessively reviewed everything Martin had given me. Tax records showing my parents' income far exceeding their reported earnings. Offshore accounts in Rachel's name holding millions. Client funds mysteriously disappearing after passing through my father's firm, laundered through a series of shell companies Rachel had established using her legal expertise. Most damning were the medical records Jason had somehow obtained. My mother had been getting prescriptions for various heart medications for years, despite having no cardiac issues herself. The same medication found in Jason's system during his autopsy, according to the toxicology report Jason had requested after apparently suspecting he was being poisoned. I needed more evidence, something that would definitively prove their involvement in Jason's death. So I began my own surveillance, careful to maintain the facade of grieving widow, still dependent on her family's support. "I'm thinking of going back to work," I mentioned casually during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The looks exchanged between Rachel and my mother spoke volumes. "It's too soon," my mother declared. "Besides, the trust provides more than enough for you to live comfortably." Rachel nodded. "Photography is so demanding, Ellie. All that travel, irregular hours. Why not take this time to reassess what you really want?" What I really wanted was justice for Jason, but I smiled weakly and agreed to think about it. Meanwhile, I was setting my trap. I began accidentally leaving my phone where Rachel or my mother could access it, with a newly created digital diary detailing my growing suspicions about Jason's death. I installed tracking software on my laptop that would record any activity when I wasn't present. I mentioned to my father that Jason had left some important documents with a friend for safekeeping, watching his face pale slightly before he composed himself. "What kind of documents?" he asked too casually. "I'm not sure," I lied. "His friend Mark mentioned it at the funeral." I've been meaning to follow up. That evening, Rachel called to invite me to lunch the next day. Just us girls, she insisted. We need to talk about your future. I agreed, knowing this was likely their response to the bait I'd laid. Before meeting Rachel, I visited my bank and emptied my personal accounts, the ones Jason and I had set up separately from the family-controlled trust. I mailed copies of all the evidence I'd gathered to 3 separate friends with instructions to deliver them to the authorities if they didn't hear from me within 24 hours. Rachel was already waiting when I arrived at the upscale restaurant she'd chosen, private, discreet, with well-spaced tables. Perfect for difficult conversations. You look better, she commented as I sat down. More like yourself. I'm getting there, I replied, studying my sister's perfect features, looking for signs of the monster hiding beneath. Clarity helps. Something in my tone made her pause. Clarity about what? About moving forward. About Jason. I took a sip of water, maintaining eye contact. About what really happened to him. Rachel's expression flickered momentarily before settling back into concerned sister mode. What do you mean? The doctors were very clear it was a heart attack. That's what the initial report said, I agreed. But Jason had concerns about his health before he died. Enough concern that he requested specific toxicology tests. The slight widening of Rachel's eyes told me everything. She hadn't known about Jason's foresight, his careful planning even as he suspected he was being poisoned. Ellie, grief can make us look for explanations, for someone to blame. Don't, I cut her off. Don't patronize me or psychoanalyze me. I know what you did, what all of you did. I know about the fraud, the embezzlement, the offshore accounts. I know Jason was gathering evidence against you. Rachel's perfect composure cracked, just for a moment. Then she reached for her water glass with a steady hand. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but you sound unhinged. Perhaps we should discuss this with Mom and Dad present. And maybe Dr. Fulton. Dr. Fulton was our family physician, another longtime family friend. So you can have him prescribe something to make me more manageable? Or perhaps something more permanent, like whatever you gave Jason. I leaned forward. I have everything, Rachel. Everything Jason collected, plus what I've gathered since his death. And it's all in safe places you can't reach. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my sister's eyes. Then something else, calculation. Whatever Jason told you, he misunderstood the situation, she said carefully. Our family's financial arrangements are complex but legal. And the idea that we would harm Jason is absurd. He was family. No, I was family. Jason was a threat. A threat you eliminated. I stood up, dropping cash on the table for my untouched drink. This conversation is over. The next time we speak will be through attorneys or in court. Rachel grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Don't be stupid, Ellie. You're in over your head. Take some time to calm down, and we can discuss how to move forward as a family. I pulled away. We're not a family. We're not even human beings to you, just pieces on your chessboard. But the game is over, Rachel. As I walked out, I heard her call after me. You'll regret this, Ellie. You have no idea what you're doing. She was wrong. For the first time since Jason's death, perhaps for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't go home after my confrontation with Rachel. Instead, I drove straight to the local FBI field office, where I had scheduled a meeting the previous day. Agent Samantha Reyes had been skeptical when I first contacted her, but the preliminary evidence I'd emailed had been convincing enough to warrant a face-to-face meeting. For 3 hours, I laid out everything: the financial crimes, the suspicious circumstances of Jason's death, the evidence he'd collected, and my own discoveries. Agent Reyes took copious notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly listening with increasing concern. This level of financial fraud is significant, she acknowledged when I finished. And the connection to your husband's death makes this a priority. But Mrs. Thompson, Ellie, you need to understand the danger you're in. These allegations involve your entire family. People with resources, connections, and apparently few moral boundaries. I understand, I said, thinking of Rachel's thinly veiled threats at lunch. What happens now? We'll need to corroborate everything, obtain warrants. This will take time, but we'll move as quickly as possible. Agent Reyes leaned forward. In the meantime, you need to consider your safety. Is there somewhere you can stay? Someone your family doesn't know about? I thought of my college roommate Lucia, now living in Seattle, across the country and completely disconnected from my family circle. Yes, I have a place. Good. Go there immediately. Don't use credit cards or your phone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. She handed me a prepaid phone. Use this to contact me, and only from secure locations. I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what I was doing, becoming a federal informant against my own family. Agent Reyes seemed to read my thoughts. I know this is incredibly difficult, she said gently. But from what you've told me, they've already chosen their path. Your husband tried to do the right thing, and he paid the ultimate price. You're finishing what he started. Tears stung my eyes as I thought of Jason, his courage, his commitment to truth even when it meant confronting my family. He deserved better. Yes, he did, Agent Reyes agreed. And so do you. Before leaving, I surrendered my phone and laptop as evidence. Agent Reyes promised to have agents secure the remaining evidence from my home, including Jason's hidden laptop. I signed the necessary paperwork, officially becoming a cooperative witness in what was now a federal investigation into financial crimes and a potential homicide. As I drove toward the airport, planning to purchase a ticket to Seattle with cash, I realized I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Jason's death, a sense of purpose, of righteous anger replacing the paralyzing grief. My family had taken the person I loved most, and they would answer for it. Before we continue with what happened next in this twisted family drama, I want to check in with you all. Are you as shocked as I was discovering that the people closest to me were capable of such betrayal? Have you ever experienced that moment when you realize someone you trusted completely was wearing a mask all along? Drop a comment below about your own experiences with family betrayal, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're invested in seeing how this confrontation unfolds. The next part of the story takes an even more unexpected turn that I still can't believe happened. 3 days later, I was settling into Lucia's spare bedroom in her Seattle apartment. She had asked few questions, sensing my need for privacy, only extracting a promise that I wasn't in any personal danger. Whatever you're running from, you're safe here, she'd assured me, respecting my vague explanation about family issues and needing space. Agent Reyes called on the 4th day. We've executed search warrants on your parents' home and your sister's apartment, as well as your father's office, she informed me. The evidence recovery is substantial. They're lawyering up, of course, but we expected that. Have they been arrested? I asked, my heart pounding. Not yet. We're building the case methodically. Financial crimes this complex require significant documentation. She paused. There's something else. The medical examiner is reviewing Jason's case based on the evidence you provided. They're considering exhuming his body for additional toxicology testing. The thought of Jason's body being disturbed was disturbing, but the possibility of proving he was murdered outweighed my discomfort. Do whatever is necessary, I said firmly. There's one more thing you should know, Agent Reyes added, her tone changing. Your sister has filed a petition questioning your mental competence. She's seeking temporary guardianship, claiming you're suffering from delusional paranoia following your husband's death. Rage flooded through me. Even now, Rachel was trying to control the narrative, to paint me as unstable rather than face the consequences of her actions. She won't succeed, I said through gritted teeth. No, she won't, Agent Reyes agreed. But it shows how far they're willing to go to discredit you. Stay hidden, Ellie. This is going to get uglier before it's resolved. She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched from afar as my family mounted a public relations campaign. My mother gave a tearful interview to a local Boston news station, describing her concern for her fragile younger daughter who had suffered a breakdown after her husband's tragic death. My father issued a statement expressing confusion over the baseless federal investigation, suggesting political motivations or a disgruntled former client. Rachel was the most brazen, creating a Find Ellie's social media campaign, complete with childhood photos and manufactured concern. My sister is vulnerable and confused, she wrote in a viral post. She needs medical help, not isolation. If anyone has information about her whereabouts, please contact us immediately. The comments were filled with sympathy for my dedicated family and prayers for my recovery. It was a masterful manipulation of public opinion, turning my absence into evidence of instability rather than self-preservation. But the FBI investigation continued despite the public theater. Agent Reyes kept me updated on their progress, which was substantial. Bank records confirmed the patterns of fraud Jason had uncovered. Clients came forward, some having suspected irregularities, but intimidated into silence by my father's reputation and connections. 3 former employees of my father's firm agreed to testify about document falsification and financial misrepresentations. The most damning development came 3 weeks into my hiding. The additional toxicology tests on Jason's exhumed body revealed significant levels of a sophisticated cardiac toxin, one that mimicked the effects of a natural heart attack but was definitively not natural. The medical examiner officially reclassified Jason's death as a homicide. Agent Reyes called me immediately. "This changes everything," she said. "We're no longer just dealing with financial crimes. This is first-degree murder, and we have enough evidence for arrest warrants." "For all of them?" I asked, thinking of my mother's tearful performances, my father's self-righteous denials, Rachel's concerned sister act. "Yes. The toxin found in Jason's system matches prescriptions your mother obtained through falsified medical records. We have surveillance footage of your sister meeting with a known black market pharmaceutical supplier 2 weeks before Jason's death. And financial records show your father transferring funds to this same individual through a shell company. They had all been involved. My entire family had conspired to murder my husband." "When?" I asked, suddenly desperate to see them held accountable. "Tomorrow morning. We'll arrest your father at his office, your mother at home, and your sister at her law firm. Simultaneously, to prevent any of them from fleeing or destroying additional evidence." Agent Reyes paused. "Are you sure you want to be there? You could stay away, protect yourself from the media circus this will become." But I had been hiding long enough. "I need to see it," I said firmly. "I need to look them in the eyes when they realize it's over." Agent Reyes arranged for me to fly back to Boston that night, with an FBI escort for protection. I would be present during the arrests, but kept at a safe distance, observing but not directly involved. "This is still an active investigation," she reminded me. "And your safety remains our priority." I barely slept on the flight, my mind racing with images of confrontation, of justice, of finally seeing the masks ripped from my family's perfect faces. By dawn, I was in a nondescript FBI vehicle with tinted windows, parked across from my sister's prestigious downtown law firm. "She typically arrives at 7:30, I told the agents. "Always early, always perfect." Sure enough, at precisely 7:28, Rachel's sleek Audi pulled into her reserved parking space. She emerged looking immaculate in a tailored suit, briefcase in hand, not a hair out of place. The Rachel Thompson the world saw, successful attorney, devoted daughter, concerned sister. The consummate performer. She made it 3 steps toward the building's entrance before agents approached from all sides. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw her posture stiffen, saw her head whip around looking for escape routes, saw the moment when the handcuffs closed around her wrists and the mask of perfection finally slipped. As they led her toward a waiting vehicle, Rachel's gaze swept across the street, somehow finding the tinted window behind which I sat watching. Though she couldn't possibly see me, her eyes narrowed with such hatred that I flinched instinctively. Even in defeat, my sister was terrifying. Agent Reyes's phone buzzed. "Your parents are in custody," she informed me after a brief conversation. "Your father surrendered without incident. Your mother became hysterical and had to be sedated by paramedics." I felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, not even relief. Just a hollow emptiness where my family had once been. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now we build the strongest case possible," Agent Reyes replied. "And you start rebuilding your life." But how could I rebuild when the foundation had been completely destroyed? Everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust had been a carefully constructed lie. Jason was gone, murdered by the people who should have loved him as I did. My family wasn't just flawed or difficult, they were monstrous, willing to kill to protect their criminal enterprise. As Rachel disappeared into the FBI vehicle, a strange thought occurred to me. In trying to control everything and everyone around them, my family had lost everything. Their reputation, their freedom, their facade of perfection, all destroyed by their own actions. And in losing everything I thought mattered, my husband, my family, my sense of safety, I had somehow found something more valuable: the truth. The months leading up to the trial were a blur of depositions, evidence reviews, and psychological evaluation. The prosecution built an airtight case against my family, combining financial records, witness testimonies, and the damning toxicology results from Jason's exhumed body. Each new piece of evidence revealed the extent of their crimes, not just against Jason, but against dozens of clients who had trusted them with their life savings. My parents' defense strategy emerged quickly: blame everything on Rachel. Their attorneys painted a picture of a daughter gone rogue, a brilliant but disturbed mind who had manipulated family connections for her own benefit. Rachel, in turn, claimed she had been following my father's instructions, merely the executioner of plans he had masterminded decades ago. The family that had presented such a united front to the world was now tearing itself apart, each member desperate to save themselves at the other's expense. Meanwhile, I struggled to rebuild some semblance of a life. I reopened my photography business, though I relocated to a small studio outside Boston. I began therapy with a trauma specialist who helped me process not just Jason's death, but the lifetime of manipulation I had endured. Slowly, I established new routines, found new purpose in documenting beauty and truth through my camera lens. The press remained relentless, dubbing the case the Thompson family affair a salacious tale of wealth, betrayal, and murder that dominated local headlines and occasionally made national news. I declined all interview requests, focusing instead on the upcoming trial and my role as a key witness. When the trial finally began, the courthouse was packed with reporters, curious spectators, and former clients of my father's firm seeking closure. I took the stand on the third day, facing my family directly for the first time since their arrests. My mother looked diminished, her designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame, her perfectly colored hair now showing gray roots. My father maintained his dignified posture, but couldn't conceal the tremor in his hands. And Rachel stared at me with cold, calculating eyes, as if still trying to figure out how to manipulate me even from across the courtroom. For 6 hours, I testified about everything: Jason's discoveries, his growing concerns, the evidence he had gathered before his death, and my own investigation afterward. I described the family dynamics that had allowed their criminal enterprise to flourish, the pressure to maintain appearances, and the casual cruelty with which they had eliminated the threat Jason posed. "Did you have any knowledge of your family's financial crimes prior to your husband's death?" the prosecutor asked. "No," I answered firmly. "I trusted them completely. That was my mistake." "And when did you first suspect your husband's death wasn't from natural causes?" I glanced at Rachel before answering. "When I found his laptop and the files he'd been collecting. Jason had suspected he was being poisoned. He kept a log of symptoms, times when he'd eaten food prepared by my mother or drinks served by my sister. He was gathering evidence until the very end." During cross-examination, my family's attorneys tried to discredit me, suggesting I was motivated by resentment over always being the less successful daughter, implying I had mental health issues exacerbated by grief. Rachel's lawyer went furthest, insinuating that I might have been involved in the financial schemes myself and was turning on my family to save myself. I remained calm, answering truthfully and directly. I had nothing to gain from Jason's death and everything to lose. He was the only person who truly saw me for who I am, who loved me without conditions or expectations. Why would I harm the one person who gave me that gift? The most difficult moment came when the prosecution played the voice memo, the accidental message from Rachel that had started my journey toward the truth. Her voice, so casual discussing my husband's murder, echoed through the silent courtroom. "Mom, I've taken care of everything like we planned. Ellie still has no idea what we did to her husband." I watched Rachel's face as her own words condemned her. For a flickering moment, her mask dropped completely, revealing a fury so profound it transformed her beautiful features into something monstrous. Then, aware of the jury's eyes upon her, she composed herself, adopting an expression of confusion, as if hearing someone else's voice. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Expert witnesses detailed the financial crimes spanning 2 decades. Medical specialists explained the sophisticated poison that had stopped Jason's heart. Former employees testified about document shredding parties and threats they'd received when questioning certain transactions. Throughout it all, my family maintained their innocence, their stories evolving as new evidence emerged, each version more elaborate than the last. But the jury wasn't convinced. After 4 days of deliberation, they returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts. My father and Rachel were convicted of first-degree murder, fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy. My mother, who had played a slightly less active role in the financial crimes but had obtained the poison used on Jason, was convicted of second-degree murder and as an accessory to the other crimes. The sentencing hearing a month later delivered the final blow to the Thompson family legacy. My father and Rachel received life sentences without the possibility of parole. My mother was sentenced to 30 years, effectively a life sentence for a woman in her 60s. As they were led from the courtroom, Rachel looked back at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold hatred and perhaps a hint of grudging respect that I had destroyed them as thoroughly as they had tried to destroy me. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. For the first time, I decided to speak publicly, standing on the steps where my family had once posed for holiday photographs, where my father had celebrated legal victories, where Rachel had announced her promotion to partner at her law firm. Justice has been served today, not just for my husband Jason, but for all the clients and employees who were victimized by the Thompson family, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. This case has taught me that sometimes the greatest dangers come from those closest to us, wearing the mask of love while harboring the darkest intentions. I hope Jason can rest in peace now, knowing the truth has finally come to light. A reporter shouted a final question as I turned to leave. How do you feel about your entire family spending the rest of their lives in prison? I paused, considering. They stopped being my family the moment they decided to murder my husband. I lost them long before today. Walking down those courthouse steps, I felt a weight lifting. Not just the burden of the trial or the investigation, but the weight of false expectations, of conditional love, of never being enough in my family's eyes. For the first time in my life, I was free of the Thompson legacy, free to define myself on my own terms. In the year following the trial, I learned that healing isn't linear. Some days, I could focus on my photography, finding beauty in ordinary moments and genuine connections with clients. Other days, the weight of betrayal crushed me, leaving me unable to leave my bed, replaying memories and searching for signs I should have noticed earlier. The media attention eventually faded as newer scandals captured public interest. I sold the townhouse Jason and I had shared, unable to live with the ghosts of false happiness that haunted its rooms. With the proceeds and the restitution ordered by the court from my family's seized assets, I purchased a small cottage on the Maine coast, somewhere quiet where I could heal at my own pace. My business slowly transformed. Instead of weddings, I focused on nature photography, finding solace in capturing landscapes untouched by human deceit. I published a book of these images titled, After Betrayal, Finding Beauty in a Broken World, that resonated with others who had experienced profound loss. Agent Reyes stayed in touch, becoming something of a friend. Your case changed me, she admitted during one of her visits. The depth of deception within one family, it makes you question everything. And everyone, I added, understanding completely. Trust didn't come easily anymore. I scrutinized new acquaintances for inconsistencies, for the subtle signs of masks I had learned to recognize. My therapist called it hypervigilance, a common response to trauma, but I considered it a necessary adaptation. The world had revealed itself as more dangerous than I'd believed, and I had adjusted accordingly. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from my mother. The prison chaplain had enclosed a note saying Diana Thompson had written it during a spiritual counseling session and desperately wanted me to read it. I almost burned it unopened, but curiosity won out. Dearest Eleanor, it began, using my full name as she always had when trying to manipulate me. As I face the consequences of my actions, I find myself reflecting on where things went so terribly wrong. Your father and I wanted to give you girls everything: success, security, respect. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of what truly mattered. Rachel followed our example too well, becoming even more ruthless than we had taught her to be. When Jason threatened everything we had built, it felt like protecting the family. I see now how twisted that thinking was. The letter continued with similar self-serving justifications, thinly disguised as apologies. My mother claimed she hadn't known the poison would kill Jason, that she thought it would only make him sick enough to stop his investigation. She blamed my father for the financial crimes, Rachel for the escalation to murder, herself only for weakness in not standing against them. The final paragraph revealed her true purpose. The appeals process is beginning soon. A statement from you about our family's history of mental health issues could make a significant difference. I know I don't deserve your help, but I am still your mother. Please find it in your heart to show mercy. I forwarded the letter to Agent Reyes and the prosecutor's office, then wrote a single-line response. The only mercy I can offer is never contacting you again. Rachel never wrote. According to prison records, she had quickly established herself in the hierarchy of inmates, using her intelligence and manipulation skills to secure privileges and protection. Some patterns never change, regardless of setting. My father suffered a stroke 8 months into his sentence, leaving him partially paralyzed. His attorneys petitioned for medical release, which I vehemently opposed through my own legal representation. The petition was denied. Though I took no pleasure in his suffering, I remained firm that justice required him to serve his full sentence, regardless of his condition. As the second anniversary of Jason's death approached, I made a decision to stop living in reaction to my family's crimes. They had already stolen too much: my husband, my trust, years of my life spent under their influence. I would not allow them to determine my future as well. I enrolled in a master's program in art therapy, combining my photography skills with the psychological insights I'd gained through my own healing journey. I started a nonprofit foundation in Jason's name, providing legal and emotional support to victims of financial fraud. His parents, who had welcomed me as a daughter and stood by me throughout the investigation and trial, served on the board of directors. Lucia, my college roommate who had sheltered me during the investigation, became a steadfast friend again. You know, she said during one of our weekend hikes along the main cliffs, what happened to you would destroy most people. But you've somehow turned it into something meaningful. I considered this as we watched waves crash against the rocks below. I had to, I said finally. Otherwise, they would have won. Not just by killing Jason, but by killing who I could become afterward. Gradually, carefully, I allowed new people into my life. A grief support group introduced me to others who understood profound loss. My art therapy colleagues shared my passion for healing through creativity. I even began dating again, with cautious small steps, being transparent about my trust issues and need for honesty above all else. 3 years after the trial, I received another official letter, this one from the warden of the Women's Correctional Facility where my mother was incarcerated. Diana Thompson had died of pneumonia complicated by undiagnosed cancer. The letter asked for instructions regarding her remains. I arranged for a simple cremation and had the ashes sent to my father's brother, the only family member who had distanced himself from my parents' schemes years earlier. My uncle called to thank me, his voice heavy with the complicated grief of loving someone who had done monstrous things. I always worried about Rachel's influence on you, he confessed. Even as children, there was something calculated about her. Your mother encouraged it, saw it as ambition rather than the warning sign it was. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, the old hurt surfacing despite my healing. I tried once. Your father threatened to destroy my business, my marriage. And I believed he could do it. My uncle sighed. I've lived with that cowardice ever since. I'm sorry, Ellie. His apology, sincere, without excuses, was the first genuine one I'd received from anyone connected to my family. It didn't heal everything, but it helped. Someone had seen the truth and, however feebly, tried to protect me. On the 5th anniversary of finding Jason's laptop, the day my journey toward truth had truly begun, I visited his grave. The simple headstone read, Jason Michael Thompson, beloved husband, seeker of truth. I had added the last part after the trial, honoring what had ultimately cost him his life, but had saved mine. I placed white roses against the granite and sat on the small bench I'd installed nearby. I'm keeping my promise, I told him, feeling neither foolish nor comforted by speaking to a headstone. It was simply something I needed to do. I'm living truthfully, fully. I'm helping others find their way back from betrayal. As I sat there, a young woman approached hesitantly, clutching a newspaper clipping. I recognized her immediately, the daughter of one of my father's former clients who had lost everything in his investment schemes. Miss Thompson, she asked. I'm sorry to intrude on your private moment, but I saw you from the path end. I just wanted to thank you. My father received restitution last month from the Victims' Compensation Fund you established. After years of working 2 jobs to rebuild what your family took from him, he can finally retire. Her words hit me with unexpected force, not the reminder of my family's crimes, but the realization that my efforts to make amends were bearing fruit, helping heal wounds I hadn't inflicted but felt responsible for nonetheless. Would you tell him something for me? I asked, standing to meet her eyes directly. Tell him I'm sorry for what my family did, but more importantly, I'm proud of him for rebuilding. That takes a courage not everyone has. The young woman nodded, tears in her eyes. That will mean a lot to him. To all of us. After she left, I remained by Jason's grave, thinking about legacy. My parents had built theirs on deception, on the appearance of success masking moral bankruptcy. Rachel had perfected their model, elevating manipulation to an art form. For years, I had been complicit through my silence, my willingness to believe the lies that kept our family functioning. But legacy can be reclaimed. Through the foundation, through my work with trauma survivors, through every honest interaction that defied my family's example, I was creating a new Thompson legacy, one built on transparency, accountability, and genuine care for others. The voice memo that had started everything still existed in an evidence file somewhere. Mom, I've taken care of everything like we planned. Ellie still has no idea what we did to her husband. Rachel's casual cruelty had been meant to remain hidden, a secret between conspirators who believed themselves untouchable. Instead, it had become the first domino in a cascade of revelations that brought justice for Jason and freedom for me. There was a certain poetry in that, the perfect, controlled Rachel undone by a simple technological error. The family that had orchestrated financial crimes for decades brought down by an accidental recording. As I left the cemetery that day, I felt Jason's presence not as a ghost or spiritual visitation, but as the enduring impact of true love. He had loved me enough to investigate my family despite the risks, to document everything in case something happened to him, to ensure I would eventually find the truth. And in doing so, he had given me the most precious gift possible, the chance to discover who I really was, separate from the Thompson family mythology. The chance to build a life based on my own values rather than the twisted legacy I had inherited. I was Eleanor Thompson, survivor of betrayal, seeker of truth, builder of a better legacy. And my story was still being written, one honest day at a time. 5 years to the day after Jason's murder trial concluded, I found myself standing in front of an audience of fraud investigators, law enforcement officials, and survivors at a conference organized by the Jason Thompson Foundation for Financial Justice. The foundation had grown beyond my initial vision, now providing resources for investigation, legal support, and recovery services for victims of white-collar crime across the country. The most dangerous predators, I told the audience, don't look dangerous. They look like respected attorneys, like devoted family members, like the people you'd least suspect of harboring malicious intent. My family maintained their facade for decades, leaving a trail of financial devastation that affected hundreds of lives. But their greatest crime was the betrayal of trust, the fundamental belief that family, at least, should be a safe harbor. I shared the story I'd lived, highlighting the red flags I'd missed and the moments when intervention might have changed everything. The audience listened intently, many nodding in recognition of patterns they'd seen in their own cases or lives. Jason died because he chose truth over self-preservation, I continued. He could have looked away from what he discovered, could have joined the family business and reaped its illicit rewards. Instead, he documented everything, created breadcrumbs I could follow after he was gone. His last act of love was ensuring I would find my way to the truth, however painful it might be. After my speech, Agent Reyes, now Deputy Director Reyes of the Financial Crimes Division, joined me on stage for a Q&A session. We had presented together often enough to have a comfortable rhythm, complementing each other's perspectives on the case that had linked our lives. The Thompson case changed how we approach family-based financial conspiracies, she explained. We now look more closely at family dynamics, at patterns of isolation and control that might indicate similar situations. Ellie's experience has literally rewritten our training protocols. When asked about Rachel, I shared what little I knew. She had exhausted all appeals and continued serving her life sentence, apparently thriving in the prison environment despite its limitations. My sister always adapted to her circumstances, I explained. She simply redirected her manipulative talents toward a different audience. My father had died the previous year, still maintaining his innocence despite the overwhelming evidence. I had not attended his funeral but had sent flowers with a card reading simply, "Justice was served." It was neither forgiveness nor further condemnation, just acknowledgement of the truth that had finally prevailed. After the conference, I returned to my coastal home, now shared with David, a widower I'd met through the grief support group 2 years earlier. Our relationship had developed slowly, built on a foundation of radical honesty and mutual understanding of loss. He was a high school history teacher who approached the world with a gentleness my family had never valued, but that I now recognized as strength. "How did it go?" he asked as I dropped my bags in our entryway, immediately handing me a cup of tea made exactly how I preferred. "Good, I think. The foundation is funding a new initiative to provide therapy for children of incarcerated white-collar criminals. Breaking the cycle, hopefully." David nodded, understanding the personal significance of this project. "Your brother-in-law called while you were gone. Rachel's requested a meeting." My stomach tightened. Rachel's husband had divorced her immediately after her arrest, changing both his and their children's names to distance themselves from the scandal. He rarely contacted me except regarding practical matters related to their children's trust funds, which I now managed as the only free Thompson trustee. "Did he say why?" David shook his head. "Just that it's not urgent, but she's been persistent. You don't have to decide anything tonight." I carried the knowledge of Rachel's request through the evening, through dinner and our quiet routine of reading beside the fireplace. By morning, I had made my decision. 3 days later, I sat in a sterile visitation room at the Federal Correctional Facility where Rachel would spend the rest of her life. I had visited once before, 3 years earlier, when she had claimed to have information about additional victims who might need restitution. That had proven to be a manipulation. She'd simply wanted to see me, to assess whether I could be useful to her ongoing appeals process. When Rachel entered, I was struck by how little she had changed. Her prison uniform was immaculate, her posture perfect, her makeup subtle, but effective despite limited resources. Even in confinement, she maintained the appearance of control. "Ellie," she said, her voice warm as if greeting me for Sunday brunch. "You look well. Maine agrees with you. What do you want, Rachel?" I kept my tone neutral, neither hostile nor friendly. She sat across from me, folding her hands on the table. "Direct as always now. I liked you better when you were eager to please." "I liked you better when I didn't know you were a murderer," I countered. "State your purpose, or I'm leaving." A fleeting smile crossed her face, not warm but appreciative, like a teacher acknowledging a student's correct answer. "I'm dying, Ellie. Aggressive ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. The prison healthcare system isn't exactly proactive." I studied her, looking for signs of deception. Rachel had always been an exceptional liar, but there was something in her eyes, a tiredness that couldn't be faked. "I'm sorry to hear that." She waved away my condolence. "Save it. I don't want pity. What I want is to set the record straight while I still can." "About what?" "About Jason." Rachel leaned forward slightly. You think you know everything, but you don't. Not really. Wariness crept through me. Even now, was she trying to manipulate the narrative? I know you killed him. You and Mom and Dad. The evidence was irrefutable. Yes, we did. Her admission, the first time she had acknowledged guilt since her arrest, stunned me momentarily. But do you know why? The real reason, not the simplified version the prosecution presented. Despite myself, I was curious. Tell me. Jason wasn't just investigating our financial dealings. He was investigating you. Rachel watched my face carefully. He found discrepancies in your photography business accounts. Significant ones. He thought you might be involved in money laundering, separate from our operations, but similar methods. That's absurd, I said immediately. My business was completely legitimate. Every dollar accounted for. Rachel nodded. Yes, it was. But Jason didn't know that initially. He hired that PI to investigate all of us, including you. He was thorough, I'll give him that. My mind raced, trying to process this new information. If that's true, why didn't the PI mention it? Why wasn't it in Jason's files? Because once he confirmed your innocence, he deleted those files. He protected you, even while building a case against the rest of us. Rachel's expression shifted subtly. He loved you, Ellie. Genuinely loved you. That's why he had to die. What? The word came out as barely a whisper. We could have bought Jason off, incorporated him into our operations. He was smart, ambitious. Dad was prepared to offer him a partnership, a share in everything. Rachel spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing a business merger rather than a murder. But he refused because of you. Because he wouldn't betray you or taint what you had together. His exact words were, Ellie deserves better than all of you. Than what you've become. Tears pricked at my eyes as I heard Jason's voice in those words, his unwavering moral compass that had cost him everything. So you see, Rachel continued, he didn't die because he discovered our crimes. He died because he loved you too much to compromise, to accept the Thompson way of doing business. And that made him dangerous in a way we couldn't control. I wiped away a tear, refusing to break down in front of her. Why are you telling me this now? Rachel shrugged slightly. Maybe the cancer has made me sentimental. Maybe I want someone to know the whole truth before I'm gone. Or maybe. She hesitated. Maybe I wanted you to know that you were loved that completely. Once. By someone. The implication was clear, that such love was rare, precious, irreplaceable. That Rachel, in her twisted way, was giving me a gift by confirming the depth of what I had lost. How long? I asked, referring to her prognosis. 3 months, maybe 4. I've refused extraordinary measures. When it's time, I'll go. No drama, no appeals for compassionate release. I'll die where I deserve to die. It was perhaps the most honest thing Rachel had ever said to me. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. I'll arrange for hospice care. Whatever you need for comfort. She looked surprised, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. Why would you do that? I considered my answer carefully. Not for you. For me. Because I won't become what you are, even when given the opportunity for justified cruelty. Rachel's laugh was bitter, but held a note of something like respect. Always the better person. Jason would be proud. As I turned to leave, she called after me, Ellie. The voice memo wasn't an accident. I stopped, looking back at her. What? I sent it intentionally. I knew you deserved to know the truth, even if I couldn't tell you directly. Her eyes held mine. Even monsters have moments of clarity, sister. Whether this final claim was truth or another manipulation, I would never know with certainty. Rachel died 7 weeks later, taking whatever genuine remorse she might have felt to her grave. I mourned her, not the sister I had known, who had never truly existed, but the sister I might have had in another life, one where our parents had valued love over success, truth over appearance, connection over control. At the small memorial service, attended primarily by Jason's parents and a few friends who had stood by me through everything, I shared what I had learned from my family's spectacular fall. That legacy isn't what you accumulate or achieve, but the truth you leave behind. That justice, while imperfect, matters. that healing happens only when we face our wounds directly, without flinching away from their depth or source. My family thought they were building something important, I told the small gathering. A dynasty, a reputation, a fortress of wealth and influence. But it was all hollow, all false. The only real things in my life were the love I shared with Jason, however briefly, and the truth I fought to uncover afterward. 10 years have passed since I first heard that fateful voice memo. My foundation continues to grow, helping more victims each year. David and I have adopted 2 children, raising them with an emphasis on honesty and integrity above all else. I still photograph nature, still find healing in capturing moments of genuine beauty in a world that can be devastatingly cruel. Sometimes, when the kids are asleep and the house is quiet, I take out the one photo of Jason I keep on display, not our wedding portrait, but a candid shot taken during a weekend hike, his face alight with laughter, utterly genuine. I tell him about my day, about the foundation's work, about the family we might have had together. It's not grief anymore, not exactly. It's acknowledgement of the pivotal role he played in saving me from my family's toxic legacy. His love, his courage, his refusal to compromise on what mattered most. These gifts continue to shape my life, my choices, my understanding of what family truly means. The Thompson name has been redefined. Not as powerful attorneys or financial wizards, but as a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal, and as a foundation that helps heal the damage such people cause. I've reclaimed my name, my story, my future from those who tried to control it. And in doing so, I've discovered the most important truth of all, that we are not defined by the wounds inflicted upon us, but by how we choose to heal, by what we build from the broken pieces, by the hands we extend to others who are still bleeding. Thank you all for staying with me through this incredible journey of betrayal, loss, and ultimately finding justice. If you've ever experienced family betrayal or watched karma finally catch up to someone who deserved it, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories with unexpected twists, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the worst betrayals. Remember, sometimes losing what you thought was family leads to finding your true strength. Until next time, this is Ellie Thompson, reminding you that the truth always finds its way to the light.